Hello world, how's it going? Hope you guys are all doing great. If not, as always, I hope it gets better for you. So welcome to a live here on the Aquashella channel, where we're going to talk about natural aquariums and just answer your guys' questions and hang out. So I got Flip Aquatics here with me on the left and SC Aquatics over here on the right. So I hope you guys are all doing great.
Absolutely, and first of all, thank you guys all for tuning in. It's always exciting to be on these shows. I don't even know how long it's been since we've done like a live stream video together.
It's been a while.
So it feels pretty good. And me and Steven just saw each other not too long ago, SC Aquatics, and so it's good hanging out with you guys. Always fun. If you guys didn't know, Steven's actually my stunt double, and so yeah, he's the better looking version for sure though. And he's got a more glorious beard, but you know, it is what it is. So Steven, you want to introduce yourself?
Hi guys, I'm Steven from SC Aquatics. I'm actually not too far from either of these guys, and I've had the pleasure of being up at Flip Aquatics and took a tour of his facility, and I've been to Lucas's house, and I'm really going to enjoy this talk on these natural aquariums because I've seen them in person, and I think Lucas is probably the master at natural aquarium keeping.
Absolutely.
So
Actually, Mother Nature is.
Nature, I stand corrected.
That's a good point.
I can't take the credit. She does the work.
That's awesome.
But yeah, if you guys never tried and haven't heard of me, I keep a lot of aquariums naturally where I don't have air lines, I don't have filters. I put the plants in, the substrate, the shrimp, the fish, and it's a lot more cost effective out there because some people don't have all the money to throw into aquariums, but it shouldn't stop them from getting into the hobby. You can still do it with bare minimal. You don't have to have all the optimals to actually keep fish and shrimp healthy and happy.
Gotcha. So I've always been curious in this. Like, so you said like you don't have to have airlines and stuff like that going. Like, what's the stocking like? Because like obviously you got to keep oxygen in the tank, right?
So the trick to it is to start slow with your stock, and as you build it up, it kind of adjusts to its own ecosystem.
Like the more fish you have, the more plants grow, the better they grow, the more carbon dioxide
yeah,
they
and it
convert.
just kind of builds as itself just naturally. But if you were to have an overstock tank and then say either if it was shrimp or fish and there's just a ton in there and you had an airline and you decided to take that plunge, be careful with that because that can cause problems because they are used to that oxygen level and some of the colonies can crash if you're not careful. So if you are trying to do that, start it from the scratch or just make sure that you don't have a huge bioload in there.
So you kind of let the tank balance out.
Yeah, naturally.
Now,
And when you do it slower, it's easier.
do you add live bacteria to start, or?
Well, what I'll do is I'll use an old dirty filter and then cycle it through that way. So squeeze that brown, dirty, moldy stuff that a lot of us are scared of into that tank. And that's actually how I cycle my tanks for these conventions, just like that, like instantly.
That's awesome.
And then I just add the fish right after I squeeze that in, kind of stir it up a little bit.
It's good to go.
Good to go. Yeah, because it's all live.
Now, Steven, do you keep natural aquariums as well?
So after going to Lucas's house and seeing all of his tanks, I do have one no filter aquarium. I do run air on it, and that's just to keep the film off the surface. But other than that, I don't run any filters on it, and it's been set up for probably 2 years like that now.
Wow. What's the water change like in natural aquariums?
So that's really interesting. So as far as water changes go, it's really good. The reoxygenation for the plants and the fish. I do still recommend water changes, but I still have tanks that I've gone at least a year without water changes.
That's crazy.
So it's not absolutely necessary, but I do think it's optimal for the plants and the fish and the shrimp to get some reoxygenation every now and then. And you do got to watch your mineralization. So say you have softer water, lots of plants, over time those plants will actually absorb those minerals down.
That was actually my next question. I was gonna be like, are you chopping off with RO water? Because I know that's kind of like the standard. But if you're keeping a lot of plants in there, it might make sense to top off with remineralized water or tap water or whatever it is.
Yeah, so I mean, it kind of varies as far as that goes because if you got really hard water, you keep topping off, you're going to start building up lime scale and calcium up on the sides and the glass, and it can be a lot of work to take care of that. But if you have the systems to have RO as well. You can actually start topping off with that, and that'll break down the minerals for you. So you can adjust it as you see it as well. Most of these fish and shrimp, they have lots of fluctuations in nature. Even when it rains, the water will get more acidic, which breaks down more of the limestone around. And TDS and all those parameters fluctuate a lot out in nature. And you can do the same thing with keeping natural aquariums. Just kind of be mindful of your TDS and mineral content as time goes.
That's really interesting. So Steven, your tank at home that you have going, is it a big tank, small tank?
It's a 29 gallon. It's got some guppies and a pea puffer in it. So the guppies I kind of put in there thinking maybe the fry, if the pea puffer was interested in some fry. He leaves the guppies alone, so the guppies are kind of just flourishing, which I wasn't expecting. So I supplement the pea puffer with ram's horns. So.
And he leaves your guppies alone.
He leaves them alone.
Man, that's surprising.
Yeah,
My
that is surprising.
adventures with pea puffers, they're always kind of ornery.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I love pea puffers. They're one of my favorite fish.
Yeah.
But Lucas, why don't you take this from the ground up? So like, I personally have never done a natural aquarium. It's always been super interesting ever since like I saw your tanks were like literally the plants are like growing over the side of like 20 tanks.
Yeah.
Like it's not just one tank, it's like growing over all of them. And that's what really inspired me. So like, what would you recommend if someone wants to start a natural tank? Would you recommend the smaller scale, or would you recommend like, 125 and have a ton of water volume?
Bigger is always better with the water volume, so go ahead and get the bigger tank if you can. Another thing with the plants and what led me to keeping natural aquariums without the filter is actually plants, because with the low to no flow, they do phenomenal because they're always trying to reach up to the top of the tank.
Yeah.
And when you blow a current on them or a power head or a filter on them, and they're always bending sideways and this way and the other way, it's hard for them to really get the growth that they need.
Yeah.
And that's what really drove me to doing the natural aquariums. And as far as like just starting from the ground up, you just gotta have faith in the Mother Nature. A lot of people get cold feet when it comes to this topic. They don't quite understand it because it's not what we're programmed to understand within this industry.
Yeah, we're programmed to have a filter, you put a heater in, you do 20% every single week. So like, there's a lot of like, mentality out there. Psychology, that's the right word for it.
Yeah.
How many tanks do you have set up as all natural?
So there's at least over 100, maybe 2 or so. More than I can count anymore.
He's a mad scientist.
Now, if somebody's got a tank already set up and they're running a sponge filter or hang-on back filter, you think it'd be easier for them to go the natural way since they already have an established tank then?
Yeah, actually, since you've already got all that beneficial bacteria in there growing, as long as you don't have some huge overstocked tank to where that filter is mediating that stock level, then you should be all right. Now, if you are worried about it, just do it during the morning and then watch your fish. They'll give you a sign if they're having issues. They'll start sucking air or going to the top like that, and then you'll know if you have too big of a bioload to be able to do that. But every time I've done it, I've never really had a whole lot of problems. Just really with my rainbows and my barbs, which there's a lot of big fish in those tanks, and they do like that current. Those are the only ones which I have to have a power head on, but they're not actually getting bubbles or air, but they're getting some circulation that still pushes water through their gills.
Right.
But when it comes to cichlids as well, it is a little tougher because they have bigger waist. So think about your fish. This is more towards shrimp, nano fish, which I'm talking about like your dwarf rams, your tetras, your cory cats, your catfish, all sorts of different types of smaller fish. But when you start getting into bigger fish like Oscars, Mabunas, and stuff like that, then it's a lot harder to do because that waste will create so much algae, and that's where the filters really come in because that beneficial bacteria is helping clear that water, that excess nutrients that you have.
And there's some fish that don't like plants to begin with, so that might be harder. You got something that's eating the plants or destroying them. That's going to set off the balance of the tank.
Yes, indeed.
So like if you were gonna start it tomorrow, Obviously, the bigger the better on the tank size. But like, what's the best beginner like fish to put in there? Like, do you put a snail in to start? Do you put a couple fish?
My favorite, well, okay, so setting up these tanks for this convention, I brought nets full of guppies. So there's probably like 40 guppies in actually, let's go with this endlers. I got probably about 40 endlers in a 2.5 gallon.
Wow.
No air.
No way.
No nothing. Just set up just the other day.
He is literally
Like,
the
straight up.
mad scientist of the aquarium office. I love
And
it.
they're all doing great. They're enjoying their life. Now with the guppies and the endlers, they're a little different. They can go to the air. They can get air that way, so they can go to the
Then go to the
surface,
surface.
breathe all that. But you don't see them all sucking air off the surface like they're really needing it.
Yeah.
So one of my favorite fishes to do this with is endlers and guppies, because there's such a symbiotic relationship between the endlers and guppies and plants and the natural aquariums, because they're constantly picking at the biofilm, they're constantly cleaning your plants for you, eating all the excess food. It's just such a great symbiotic relationship.
So I got another question. This is like a little, not off topic, but it's a little change of directions. So we're setting up a big gallery, and we have like these, 300 gallon tanks, 150 gallon tanks. I desperately want to do one of these natural like ecosystems. Would you ever be interested in coming out and setting one up for me?
Oh, I can help you out walking through that. Yeah,
My
no
man.
problem, no problem.
You
Yeah, I
heard it
got you.
here. You heard it here. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
Steven, what you got, man?
Oh, nothing much. Just, day-to-day operations, I guess. No new tanks really set up. I did get a couple bigger tanks over the last year. I just haven't set them up yet. But a 200-gallon cube, which I thought would be really cool until I realized it's only front-facing panel. So you can't see in the tank from the sides.
Yeah.
So I'm not really sure what I want to do with that yet.
I know what you could do with it.
I thought about putting it into a wall.
Put it into a wall and start a natural tank, right?
A natural tank in the wall would be pretty sweet. So I don't know. I've always said I want to do discus, but I don't know if I want to dive into the higher temperatures yet.
Gotcha. Well, what's the best plant to start with? Like, I know a lot of people use, what is it, pothos?
Yeah,
Like-
I mean, it's okay.
Are you mainly like straight aquatic plants? Do you like terrestrial plants? Like what?
I like it all.
Really?
If it's green and it goes in a tank, I like it. Yeah. So I got pothos in many of my tanks. I love the mosses. Pearlweed's one of my favorites.
Pearlweed's
Really,
awesome.
you can't go wrong with types of plants. Just keep in mind where you get your plants from, because sometimes they have transition periods. And as they die back, just make sure you get those dead leaves coming out. Watch for your new growth, and as that all adapts, you should be fine. Really, there's no specific one over the other. You do have like Anubias and Java ferns, which uptake fertilization, nutrients a lot slower, opposed to like pearlweed mosses guppy grass that'll absorb it a lot quicker because they're faster growers. So think about how fast your plants grow, and that'll help you with your bio load and your biosystem.
That's another topic we can talk. We can answer some questions,
Okay,
but
yeah, I see a couple
definitely want to
questions.
dive into fertilization and like how you fertilize versus allowing the fish poop to kind of be the fertilizer, like kind of what that looks like. But let's do some questions.
Okay, well, let me answer that real quick.
Okay,
since
we'll
we're on
answer
it.
that. Yeah, I like it.
As far as fertilizers go, there's quite a few plants that just don't need anything. Now, with your stem plants, they really do like some minerals and nutrients because they're always stretching up, constantly growing a lot faster.
Yeah.
If you got harder water and some kind of mineralization already coming through, that's also helpful.
Yeah.
But when it comes to ferts, myself, I have to watch ferting too much, because if I fertilize
Farting too much.
yeah,
Sounds a whole lot like farting too much.
I mean, that happens too, we're all human.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't recommend doing that in your tank. But I do a micro and macro dose within my aquariums, and I have to watch doing it every day, because they'll actually grow too fast to where I can't handle them.
So it's hard to keep up.
Well, it's a maintenance thing too. So say if you don't have that much time to stick up with the maintenance, a lot of these aquascape tanks that you see, the maintenance on them, it's like every week. These guys are really diligent, like taking care of them. And if you don't have the time, but you really want to keep an aquarium, you can kind of mediate that growth with what you feed your plants as well. So So just watch your tank. It'll talk to you. As long as you're seeing new growth, you're good. You're on the right path. But if you see your plants start shrinking, then you should probably feed them.
Got it. That's good advice. What do we got for some questions?
So as far as questions, somebody's asking well water or city water. So that can depend on
That's a
areas.
loaded question.
Yeah. So you got soft water. Some people have soft. Some people have hard water. But as far as the natural aquariums go, you can do it either way, either or. With the softer water, the soft acidic water, there's going to be less bacterial and fungal loads because not as many can survive in that acidic water opposed to hard water. So that's the only thing to really watch out as far as the soft and hard water difference between natural aquariums.
Well, I think this is a good point too. Like, I mean, obviously you're the master at the natural aquarium. So like, what's your water like? Like, what do you do specifically?
So I'm kind of, well, I've got really hard water, and most people do cichlids around me. So we're at like 330. When I first started, we're running 400 or 500 TDS.
That's really hard if you guys didn't know. That's super
It's
hard.
like liquid rock. But I do now have a RO system, which kind of helps me mediate and neutralize. I try to hit around 200 TDS, which is close to what rain should be.
Gotcha.
And ever since I did that, pretty much anything can live in that neutral acidity or TDS.
Gotcha.
But
how about you, Steven? You have that natural tank at home. I don't even know what type of water you have in.
So I'm in Columbus, and I run tap water. It's typically the mid 200s, around 250 TDS. I don't use RO water. I don't keep anything that really requires super soft water. So with like the two, it kind of depends on the time of the year, but it's typically 250 TDS. And I use that on my shrimp, and my live bears love it. And I still have to dose calcium, so I do dry fertilizers by Nilo CG. Calling it Grice, I believe is his last name. But I use like calcium sulfate because a lot of the tanks with all my snails, the water, they just don't have enough calcium to grow their shells. And then once they deplete all those minerals, you can start seeing it in their shells. They start getting pits. So I actually add calcium, so that's one way I do it. And then the other way is chicken egg shells. I grind up used egg shells. So you make breakfast, I just clean the shells off and then grind them in a coffee grinder. And I'll add the powder to all my tanks because it's not just the snails that benefit from some extra calcium. You know, plants can also absorb it.
And you just rinse them off in the sink?
Yeah, so I know a lot of people do. I think you do it too, Lucas, right?
I've done it before, yeah.
So I don't know. I'm a little paranoid about salmonella or whatever. So I do wash it with Dawn dish soap just a little bit, and I make sure I rinse it really well. A lot of people say they just dump the shells in with no issues. But I just use a coffee grinder because it makes it into a powder. Because I found that I could do chips, but it takes a long time to absorb into the water column. But using a coffee grinder, it makes it like a real fine powder, and I'll just dump a little bit into each tank. And then you can see it kind of disappear after a couple weeks on a little bit more, and that's just the way. It's a free way of adding calcium. So
yeah, and so if you guys are at home, biggest thing to take away is anything we're talking about, don't dive in 100%. Like, start slow. So if you're gonna grind up some eggshells and stuff, just add a little bit, see how it goes, and then adjust from there. If you're gonna start a natural aquarium, like, don't throw your filter away and throw some plants in your tank. Like, definitely take your time with whatever you're gonna do, because you don't want to make those sudden changes. It's best to kind of just start slow and work your way from there, or start at the bottom and then build up.
yeah,
Definitely watch your tank too. Your tank will talk to you if you
Yeah,
listen
especially
to it.
plants.
Yeah.
Plants are really good at communicating how they feel.
Yeah.
'Cause I feel like once your planet tank is really well balanced, your maintenance goes down as far as the algae is. Your plants are uptaking the nutrients or the load quicker than algae. Because I find that, I guess snails help too, but a lot of the tanks that are just really well balanced, there's really no maintenance other than trimming plants.
Yeah, it makes life easier, and a lot of that's just the beneficial bacteria doing its thing. That mulm in there, all the little microorganisms that eat off of that, they're all cleaning the water. It's crazy how it really all works.
Yeah.
There's all these little essences of life in the aquarium that we don't really see that are doing so much work in the background.
It's all about Mother Nature.
Yeah, for sure.
She's the best aquascaper of them all.
She is. She's been doing it a long time.
She's been doing it way longer than us.
And Mom's great to have in your tanks if you're breeding fish too, because
yeah.
I've noticed, you know, when I first started into the hobby, I was always trying to keep the tanks really clean. And then watching other YouTubers, Lucas's channel from years ago, you know, you always stress about having Mom in there because all the microbugs, the microfauna and everything in there, and if you especially like Corey Doors, you can see them go in that Mom and they're eating things. So, you know, having a crystal clean tank may not be really the best.
No, when it comes to fish breeding, that's what I've learned is the dirtier the tank, the better.
Yeah, and I love that we're talking about this because I get a lot of people that come in and will say like, hey, I failed at fish keeping and fish are just really hard. Not even shrimp, just, you know, in general. And I'm like, let me guess. You broke down your entire tank, cleaned it, and set it back up. And they're like, yeah, what's that got to do with anything? I'm like, you can't do that. Like, that's where, like, all the bacteria is living in that gunk. And so a lot of people just don't know the proper way of cleaning a tank. They think, like, having a crystal clear tank that has no algae, like perfect white crystal sand, and a fake piece of driftwood is the way to go. But in reality, like, the more nature you have in there, the more algae you have, like, that means things are living in your aquarium, which in turn means that your aquarium is, like, healthy.
Yeah, definitely. So algae is actually Mother Nature's great equalizer. So when it comes to excesses in an aquarium, if it wasn't for algae, many of us would be losing in the game of the fish hobby, because the algae always shows up when there's either excesses of decaying leaves and matter, nitrates, ammonias, all kinds of certain things that certain algae feed off. And if these algae weren't here to help us, we would be, you know,
we'd just be going in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is cool. I like that. Algae is Mother Nature's equalizer.
Yeah,
that's really cool.
That'd be a good warning sign too, that you might have something going imbalance.
Yes,
all of a sudden your tank starts getting a ton of algae. It's kind of like the other thing would be like a bacterial bloom. Like you get bacterial bloom, you know something's going on. So that's a good way to.
Your tank's talking to you. Yeah. So when we talk about watch your tank and it'll speak to you, these are the certain types of things we're talking about.
Yeah. I love it, man. This is gonna be a lot of fun. Like, we're breaking down our 480 gallon right now, which is like our.
Oh, are you really?
Yeah, it's like my favorite. It's my baby.
That thing's awesome.
Like, as far as fish tanks, like, that's my baby.
Yeah.
And so I'm really excited to do something new. So, like, talking about a natural tank, like, it really opens my eyes to trying new things, and it's something that I've never tried before. So it really excites me.
So you have a sump on that.
Yeah.
Now, what I would do with that 480 is turn that sump into another tank. So you can keep it a natural tank, but just keep the pump going. You'll still have the circulation, but you can still keep that sump as another tank.
Now, do you do like any sponge in your tanks, like places for biological filtration to grow, or is it literally like it just grows on like the substrate and the plants and like?
Yeah, it just grows in the substrate plants, which I've got dense sand and everything else. It's just the way my tanks are is like cutting out a little piece of cake from a creek, and that's just what it is.
That's what it is.
Yeah. So like out in Mother Nature in that sand substrate and everything else, it finds a way to get into the bottom of it. As tiny as the microorganisms are, it's really wild, because some of the sand can be really dense, and you would think like, where's the mole at?
Yeah.
But it's in there.
It's in there.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
I like that how you said that it's like a piece of like a cake. It's a little slice of a river scene, and I think that's really a pretty awesome way to describe it.
I mean, that's the way this hobby was set up. Like, bring nature into your home. And so yeah, like I love like walking into my warehouse every single day and just seeing like the things that I love and just being inspired every day. So like my goal is for everyone, like even at their offices at work, to have a little tank that they just, when they're stressed out, their hair's falling out like mine, and they're gaining a little weight, like all the stressful things in life, like they're able to just sit back and look at this little tank and this little piece of nature on their desk, and it's so inspiring, it's relaxing, and I feel like we're getting into a world that's so hustle and bustle that it's nice to just kind of take a step back and look at what you've built and what Mother Nature is doing inside of our own homes.
Definitely, and if you look at the hobby right now, as far as like the keepers and the amount of people getting into it, it just keeps increasing and increasing. And I think a lot of people are thirsting for that reconnection to Earth and Mother Nature, because we've been steering away from it for so long, and like so many people are just tired of it and starting to come back to nature, and just to get a piece of that cake in your office, like
that
you
little
said,
piece of cake.
It can do so much for your soul. It's crazy.
That's awesome.
And I'm seeing more and more people now are doing planted tanks. Not necessarily like an aquascape, but having live plants in their tanks, which is super awesome, because not only are you getting the benefits of those live plants, but your tank is changing every month. It looks a little bit different. So, you know, before where people would have tanks with like the SpongeBob and like, you know, it's cool that gets you in the hobby, but once you start getting plants, it really just takes off.
It starts growing, evolving, you get to watch it all, and then that just leads you down a whole rabbit hole of wanting all kinds of different plants, because you want to try this one and that one, and it's fun. And there's a million ways to do it. Like with saltwater, like you could set frags up and corals up here and there, but they all kind of look like saltwater tanks. But when it comes to freshwater tanks, there's so many looks you can do. So many different color schemes and combinations, rock, driftwood, just so much you can do.
How about CO2? Like, how does that factor into a natural aquarium? Like, do you ever add it, or?
That's a little trickier, because what'll happen is
it.
the CO2 can build up, and then that can be real problematic with planted aquariums, because what'll happen at night is plants will uptake that oxygen. Like, it may look normal during the day, may look all right, but at night, when the plants start absorbing that oxygen and start pushing out more CO2, your fish can get drunk off that and even die. So you do have to be careful with CO2. I don't use it anymore in a lot of my tanks. I'm actually getting ready to set up a new system in my utility room where I want to do CO2. But,
wait, is this another room of tanks that you're adding onto your already?
So it's already existing. I'm just going to transition what I'm keeping in the tanks and how because I want to do more. I want to try the Dutch style with the natural aquariums. I always did like.
Is that where it's just a ton of stem plants in a tank?
Yeah, lots of colorful stem plants and like really getting baby to grow and all that stuff. But I've always kept a filter doing that. I've never actually done that with a no filter yet. So I do want to try that out. Yeah.
So check out Lucas Bretz, our LRB Aquatics aquarium hoarder on YouTube. And you'll see that coming up soon.
Something I want to mention too to you guys is, Lucas, you do a talk on keeping natural aquariums. I've actually been to it twice now. It's great, guys. I don't know what the future's going to bring as far as you going to these clubs and doing your talk, but if he does get back into that and you have the opportunity to go see Lucas, you can see all this in depth. He does an awesome PowerPoint presentation, and I can honestly say of all the talks I've seen, yours has been my favorite, because a lot of talks will, they'll show pictures of, if it's a collection talk, but Lucas actually puts like little videos into his PowerPoints, which really keeps you engaged, and it's very interesting to learn as much as possible from the guy that's been doing it, and doing it on a large scale. So if you guys have a chance, check out LRB when he does a live talk.
I really appreciate that, bro.
Yeah.
But I am doing more talks. I will be at the Keystone Clash here in Pennsylvania. I'm not sure when the dates are. My girlfriend handles all the dates. And then we got
she's the administrator, right?
Fish-A-Ween or something. Yeah.
It's good to have one of those.
It is.
I love it.
And I'll be in Portland, Oregon here in November as well.
No way.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, we're giving some shout outs. SC Aquatics over there. Why don't you share a little bit about your business?
So my business is just, I started keeping fish as a hobby. It started with really shrimp tanks. I started a fish room because I wanted all the colors of the shrimp, and then it kind of grew, and then I think now I stopped at around 60 tanks. I said no more tanks, but it's kind of, I go through these phases where like I'm going to downsize, and I end up adding more tanks than I downsize to, so I don't know how that keeps happening. And then shrimp kind of got me. I started breeding shrimp and selling them, and I actually have Lucas's Blue Dreams, and my cherries are actually from you from a few years ago. That's
crazy.
I gotta say, you actually kind of got me into the shrimp game back in the day, and then I found Lucas, and I bought his Blue Dreams, and I still have both those lines to this day, and I kind of just focus on those two. I did get some yellows and some oranges. The oranges, I couldn't get them to stay straight, that line straight. They kept popping different colors off. But your Blue Dreams are solid, you know, and same thing with the reds. After
And those Blue Dreams, those are the ones that won at the international contest.
I don't think they actually ever won an award.
Darn it.
Yeah,
They
because
should.
The judges.
Which ones are the favorites?
Well, you got to look at the judges' views when you're entering the shrimp contest. And the blues, they don't ever really look into that much because it's hard to get the size on them.
Gotcha.
And judges always steer towards the reds and yellows. I've learned.
That's crazy. I am totally biased to blue. Like I love blue.
Yeah.
Blue anything.
I think blue's my favorite.
There is something else I would like to talk to you about the natural aquariums and kind of how I do it.
Yeah.
What I'm doing is nothing new. So that, like you mentioned earlier, and I was trying to get to this, when the hobby first started, that's what they were literally doing, dragging tanks out or just dragging their stuff from the creek, throwing it in a tank. They didn't have all these filtration systems and everything else. It didn't happen until later on when commercialism and everything started getting into the hobby that we started seeing all these other filters and different ways to optimize our
it's not that it's
keeping.
wrong.
But I think it hit like a certain threshold where it got to be too much and we lost the way towards the natural. And I think there needs to be a balance there. So it shouldn't be one way or the other because there's so many different ways to do it, like I mentioned. But
Yeah, because there's things like glowfish that's a very controversial subject, but at the same time, the good thing about things like glowfish is a lot of kids can get inspired by the hobby through something that glows in the dark.
Right.
And so that can create the next generation of hobbyists that can really take this thing to the next level and really bring it back to the natural aquarium.
yeah, see, I mean, I've never been a big fan of glowfish myself, but that's a very good point. And anything that really gets somebody into the hobby and gets them reconnected with Mother Nature, hey, I'm all about it.
Yeah. And it's all about, like, the cool thing about us as influencers and the many influencers that are here is we almost have an obligation to everyone out there to kind of lead the direction that the hobby's going. And that doesn't mean that, like, I don't want that to sound like we're like anything special, but what we do every day influences what's going to happen tomorrow. And so as long as we all are on the bandwagon of like the natural aquarium, live plants, like I'm sure the hobby is just going to keep going that direction and getting more and more into that. And so that's the really cool thing is we're kind of in a driver's seat, which really helps, get the hobby on the right path. Not necessarily that it's on the wrong path now, but it's kind of cool to be a part of that movement.
Yeah, and really help people have a lot more enjoyment with their tanks instead of the frustrations that can come with it if they're just doing too much.
Yeah.
And that's another point I'd like to say is just be careful doing too much as well, because the more you disturb it, the more you can create imbalances. Don't freak out when things start happening. Just think about it, because the more you start messing with aquariums, the worse you can make them sometimes.
That actually brings up a really good point, is you also run a business where you sell the plants, you sell the fish and things like that. I know personally I've had some people that have a tank, it's set it up, it's doing good, and then they like trim a bunch of plants and then all of a sudden things go downhill.
Yeah.
And so how do you counteract that, or what steps do you take to ensure that the off-balancing doesn't happen?
So you just think about your biomass really and what that biomass is absorbing. So when you take out a large biomass from a planted aquarium, it can have an effect, and you always want to do a water change after you do that. That will help balance that back, because I think it's got to be some kind of bacteria or some kind of other bioload that's microscopic that it makes either cloudy water, which is normally bacteria. And when you do the water changes, it helps clear that out, get the new water in, and then the good bacteria has a column, clean column to start growing in, and pulls out all the nutrients, excess nutrients that those plants now can't absorb because you pulled them out.
Gotcha. Love it, man. Well, see, I know we kind of cut you off. I mean, you feel free to ask a question, but I wanted to make sure you had the time to kind of talk about yourself and your business.
No, that's okay. I was just going to say on the we're mentioning about the bacteria bloom, you get that whitish water. a lot of people, I think, when that's happening, it's because there's an imbalance, right? So maybe it was after a big trimming or, something happened. A lot of people see that water and they think it's dirty water and they're trying to water change that out. I always tell people leave it. It usually will correct itself, and a lot of times it's in a day, but I think people might not be educated on that, and they like, the water's dirty, let me water change out, but
freak out and
they're getting rid of all that bacteria. So if you ever have that, it's just the tank's trying to balance itself back out.
Yeah, exactly. And that bacteria blooms, it won't just kill your fish right away. I mean, I know it's new to some people when they're in the hobby, they see it and it's easy to be like, oh crap, there goes my tank. But just don't freak out, don't hit it too hard, and let it balance out. You can actually add more plants that'll help balance it as well.
How about green water?
Green water, that's a tricky business too.
I knew it would be.
Yeah. So,
I like green water personally.
Yeah, so in natural aquariums, often you can get green water as well, and what usually happens from that is just excess of nutrients. If plants die back, the decaying plant material will help create that green water. But it's nothing to freak out about either. Matter of fact, a lot of fish love green water. They play in it, they eat off of it. It'll actually create a sludge on the bottom of your tank. That's why it's so hard to get rid of, because it can get embedded into the substrate, and you keep doing your water changes, but as you're doing that, the algae sludge that's down on the bottom from a green water tank just keeps refilling the column, and it just eats it up. That's why it's so hard to get rid of sometimes.
So if I have green water in my natural tank at home, what steps should I take to either reduce it or get rid of it?
The best way to do it is find some Daphnia.
Daphnia.
So even if there's fish in that tank, Daphnia, I would add them at night. That way they'll just go straight down to the bottom, find cracks and crevices. But even if there's a lot of fish in there, they can live in those cracks and crevices, and they're smarter than you would think.
Yeah.
And they will still filter out their water for you over time.
Daphnia, just for everyone at home that may not know, it's like a it's not microscopic. They probably get like 1 or 2 centimeters at most. And right?
That's kind of big. They're
1 centimeter?
Millimeters, probably.
Millimeter. Okay,
yeah.
so I'm in the wrong measurement
wrong
system.
meters.
Yeah. Millimeters. So they're pretty small, but they're a really great source of live food for your fish.
Oh, absolutely.
And so if you do have green water, it could turn into a good thing if you have multiple tanks.
It's the absolute easiest way to take care of it. I mean, that's what I've learned. Now you can gravel back or try to suck it out. With sand, it's a little harder to gravel back, but that's about the only way to get rid of it. Is you just got to get that sludge out. And as that Daphnia is in there at the bottom, eating whatnot, it'll eat up that sludge or whatever.
Awesome.
Green water will come into the colony. I don't have a whole lot of green water tanks anymore because of that.
You just add the Daphnia in?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Green water seems to really help some fry grow too.
Oh yeah, definitely, because it can be a food source for young baby fish and even adult fish. Cory cats, ottos, guppies, they eat it all the time. Shrimp love it.
Yeah?
Yeah, oh yeah. Oh, you want to get a colony of shrimp really going gangbusters, throw it in a green water tank.
It's always fun hanging out with other shrimp people because you always learn something new. So I love it, man.
Yeah, because I mean, that's a constant food source, and as fast as green water grows, I mean, it's consistent.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So if you do have it in your tank, do you actually turn down the feeding to allow them to consume it more? No, you just keep plugging away.
Let them pile up.
I love it. Well, I know we do have to start wrapping up. So, SC, why don't you start us off and just share a little bit more about your business and how people can find you?
All right, so my business name is SC Aquatics. It's just my initials. I get a lot of questions like, am I from South Carolina? No, it's my initials. My website is 614fish.com. Basically, the name is different than the website because SC Aquatics was taken.com. It's a university's aquatic program.
Oh, so South Carolina.
So you can't buy anything there.
Yeah, so I had to come up with a .com, and 614 is my area code, so that's what I kind of rolled with. And so I've been doing a lot more selling of local breeders. So if you're in the Central Ohio area, I saw one of my rainbow breeders is here, and we got all these hobbyists that love breeding fish, but they don't either want to ship fish, they don't want to deal with the hassle. So I buy locally bred fish and then I resell it. And I ship all over the country. If you're out of the country, I don't ship, unfortunately. But if you're in the United States, I do ship fish and shrimp. And this year, I focused. I went the wholesale fish route for the last couple years, and I stopped doing wholesale fish. I only buy locally bred fish now. So
That's awesome.
But do you still do 3D printing?
I do 3D printing too. I actually, I guess I can mention it. I haven't even told my channel members yet.
Oh man!
But I'm working on a nano light. So I'm kind of basically, I'm not afraid to say it, but the lights are coming from China, where most of the products are made in China. But a low wattage LED light that I'm designing a housing for it, because I want a light for my display tanks in my family room, just to class them up a little bit. So I'm working on designing a fish tank light right now that I'm hoping to be very inexpensive, and I'm going to 3D print everything for it.
Nice.
You got some crazy things going on over there, man.
Yeah,
It's never ending. It's a lot of little projects, just a ton of them right now.
And that's what's so great about this hobby. Like, just even little projects like that you can get in, and there's so much you could do.
It's fun.
That's awesome.
How about you, Lucas? Why don't you tell us a little bit about your business?
Oh, LRBAquatics.com.
LRBAquatics.com.
So I keep lots of different things: guppies, plants, shrimp, as mentioned before, and everything's homegrown. We got a website, LRBAquatics.com, and we've been shipping and doing it for years and years. So if you like homegrown stuff, nice, clean, healthy stuff, we got it for you.
That's awesome. Yeah.
What about you, Flip?
What about Flip? So I am just a normal guy, and no, I have a business. It's Flip Aquatics. I got into it as a shrimp keeper, and it's a long story. But long story short, we sell a lot of shrimp. We're getting more into like the nano fish side of things, and my goal is to really focus in on the nano tank. And like I talked a little bit earlier about, people in their offices having a tank and keeping nature in there because it's so stressful. And trust me, I know, I get so stressed out some days, being in the hustle bustle of the business and stuff like that. And so I really want to focus in on the nano tank because I want to see more people at work being able to have that and kind of create an easy solution for them to get that. And also, I just feel like the more time that goes on, there's less space. And so really going towards the nano tank and making it easier is just a smart choice. So we do plants, we do shrimp, we do snails, we do nano fish. We got a little bit of everything. And so flipaquatics.com. But definitely check out LRB Aquatics. Definitely check out SC Aquatics. These guys are phenomenal people. And if you're looking for more personalized experience, these are the guys to go to.
You talk about that being a stress relief too, and when you're working and everything's all going on and you do have that office desk, now when it comes to time to feed in your fish, all that's just going to wash away. When you go to feed your fish, at least that's what it is with me. You always just get this connection as you're feeding them, and it's kind of like a little escape for people.
Yeah, so we're setting up a gallery, for lack of better words, with some big tanks that we talked about in the stream.
I've watched you grow from the beginning.
Oh, you've
I
seen
remember
You've
Flip
seen
Aquatics
yeah.
since before all the warehouses and what all you guys been doing. You guys have been really.
It's been crazy, and with the gallery, I'm super excited. Not only for the education side of it, but for me selfishly, I'm just excited to have tanks and really be a hobbyist. And so right now I have an office at my warehouse, and I'm really thinking about taking my office out of where it is and potentially giving that to someone else and moving my desk right into the center of the gallery.
Do it.
Just because I just want to be surrounded
360 degree of tanks.
Oh, everything. And no matter what happens in a day, I can just look around and be relieved.
Just spin your chair and be like, this is nice.
So that's the goal. And so there's a lot of cool stuff going on, and I'm just I'm really blessed to be in the position that I'm in, and I'm blessed to have friends like these guys and all the other creators that are here, and it's been an amazing ride.
You gotta count them blessings.
You gotta count them blessings.
So how long has Flip Aquatics been Flip Aquatics now?
2014, so 7 years.
Awesome.
Yeah, it turned 7 in July of this year.
You're gonna have to have a birthday party.
We were going to, but with COVID, like everything just gets so busy. Like,
Yeah.
the pandemic just makes everything a little bit more difficult,
Yeah.
and so we've missed a lot of those things. But I really wanna have like a party at our warehouse where not only our employees can celebrate, but we can actually like invite our channel members and invite some creators that live close and kind of like just celebrate the hobby and also celebrate what we've done with Flip Aquatics too.
Hey, I'm always down for free dinner.
Hey, we'll make it happen. But all right, so we'll wrap this up. Do you want to close this out?
For me, yeah. I
Yeah,
guess I
you
can.
sing a song,
Well, I
right?
hope you.
You sing a song
That's
before
for
the break?
Friday
No.
night Q&A.
Well, you
We
do
can't
it anyway.
What?
It's been just whatever song you always sing because I love it.
Whatever. I don't have an outro song.
We'll do an intro song and then SC
What the
or
hell,
Steven can.
world? How are you? Got some Q&A to do. I hope you're doing fine, cause it's Q&A time again. That's the normal
I
song.
love it.
But then there's also that Mr. Placo that's out there too.
Oh, the Mr. Blake was
Which,
good.
if you guys haven't seen it, YouTube it. You got like a
It's
music
clowning.
video to it.
Yeah,
Mr.
it's
Placo.
funny. You guys would enjoy
pretty
it if you
awesome.
like fish.
Well, Steven, why don't you close us down, man?
All right, guys. I want to say thank you for watching us. If you haven't been to an Aquashella, check it out. It's in Florida,
Yes,
Texas, and here in Chicago. So, it's a close drive to you, or even fly. I really would recommend checking it out. But I just want to say thanks to all you guys watching us and all you guys that are here supporting the industry. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.
Awesome.
See you guys.
Take care.